Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Scene interview. As we approach the BFI Future Film Festival, which will run in venues across the UK and online from the 20th of February to the 6th of March, we're celebrating everything the film festivals have to offer with a series of interviews with filmmakers who've had a lot of success on the festival circuit. I'm Jack Synnott, and I'm a BFI Film Academy young programmer. And this week I'm talking to Rob Price about his film Strangers. Rob is a London-based director and sound designer. He's directed many short films and also worked on sound on a variety of high-profile projects, including Inside Number 9, The Wonder, Good Luck to You, Leo Grande, and Luther. He also, in 2017, set up Earth Sound, a Foley recording company that runs to this day, recently constructing the largest Folio studio in the UK. His 2023 film Strangers is a really interesting and mysterious film about a young woman who meets an odd, unnerving stranger while out walking her dog through an isolated area. It touches on loads of interesting themes, especially the difficulties and the dangers of communication, and has a really palpable atmosphere and sense of threat and tension throughout. It premiered at the 2023 BFI London Film Festival, and it won the award for Most Challenging Film at Indie Links in 2024. I'm extremely excited to talk to Rob this afternoon about his film and his filmmaking journey. So, Rob, do you want to kick things off by introducing yourself and your film, Strangers?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Rob Price. I think the introduction you just gave to the film, yeah, that summed up everything I might have said to sum the film up. But yeah, basically, I'm yeah predominantly a kind of sound design, sound post production person, and yeah, occasionally direct the odd film. And Strangers was one of those kind of films that I did. It was a script that was written sort of quite a while ago during COVID, even that I was sort of sitting on this script for quite a while, and then a couple of good friends of mine just were hounding me forever to make it, and eventually I gave in and made the film. And yeah, as you say, it's a sort of quite a simple film, two characters in a quite isolated location. And there's a kind of sort of threatening, mysterious element to it. Yeah, and yeah, basically just made the thing. Had no idea if anyone would be at all interested in it. Really, I didn't have a lot of strategy or things like that going on. I just figured I'd try and make the film that I wrote, and it did quite well. It got into the BFI London Film Festival, which was a real shock, and it yeah, it was amazing that happened, and it played there and various other really good festivals, and yeah, that was the journey of the whole thing.
Great. And I can understand why it had such a successful journey because there's just so many interesting things to pick apart in the film. And one that really stood out to me watching it is how dialogue is used because you're kind of always, as an audience member, leaning in to try and figure out things about the characters that never get quite revealed. And could you maybe talk about what you did to ensure that you were never giving too much away, but still kind of keep people's interest in the characters, either through dialogue or through any other aspects of the filmmaking process?
Yeah, that's a difficult one because it's about the writing of it, which obviously happened ages ago. But I remember when I was writing the concept, I certainly didn't know the ending. So I was kind of writing with the characters, almost in first person. So the characters trying to advance their own particular agenda, let's say, or what they wanted out of the situation. In the case of the stranger's characters, that's not really revealed to the audience, but at least in my head, I had an idea, and just writing with their intentions in mind, and just how each one of them might want to advance the situation. And sometimes, in a way, that's kind of what happens in small talk a lot, but not so much as having somebody clearly state what they wanted. Is what they say is sometimes just something on the surface, just to buy some time or just to keep things going. But really, just keeping in my head what does the person want? How are they trying to play their way through the situation? And then yeah, just that was kind of the first write of it, and then there was just all the rewrites were really thinking more broadly as a kind of maybe from more of an audience perspective of not trying to just stay on this very particular line that I wanted to stay on, where we weren't giving people too many ideas one way or the other. Just I feel like just when you've made people feel threatened enough, bring them back in a little bit. And yeah, so just really trying to keep everything on the line. That was all the sort of rewriting of just going back. And yeah, but it was just a long process of writing and rewriting really that got that. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think something that maybe amplifies it is that it really feels in this film that the actors are on the same wavelength that you are and have kind of really keyed into the atmosphere of the film. Was there anything you did specifically as a director to encourage them to see it that way, or were they just kind of on board from the beginning and very much kind of tuned in to what you were trying to do?
Yeah, I think with both actors, so I worked with them really separately. That's the first thing to mention. So um, we did eventually rehearse together, but right at the end, and just to work out little bits of blocking stuff. But whenever I gave direction to them, for example, it was always separately. I didn't want them to ever confer together about the story, or they needed to not know what the other one how the other one was going to play it each time they came together to do a take. Um, and also, even from the beginning, you know, more than rehearsing, I discussed the film a lot with them separately, and what they thought, their characters' intentions were, how they could blend what's written with what they might do in the situation, and kind of like just sort of bring that back into the writing to make that more real. So I really wanted, I think, from the off with this one, for it to be a really sort of actor led experience, and to really, yeah, try and create an environment that was good for the actors. I think that was the first priority over everything uh, in the process. So yeah, and I think I was just, yeah, learning from them really, and just, yeah, as I say, the main thing I would do is just intervene and just separately, just try and keep them separate, and then come together and see how they would play, learn something from that, and then do another take. So yeah, that's kind of how that panned out.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to hear how you talk about it so collaboratively because there's kind of various collaborators that you've worked with across your films in different roles sometimes, but kind of like this team that develops. And how important would you say that those kind of collaborative relationships are to you? And maybe in a more general way, do you have any advice to filmmakers trying to develop fruitful collaborative relationships and keep them going across multiple projects and kind of use them to make a project as good as it can be.
Yeah, so I basically, without the people that I collaborated with, I wouldn't have made the film at all. And that's not just I wouldn't have shot it in the way I shot it or whatever. It's like I wouldn't have even got it off the page. Just because some of these people were the ones that really pushed me to do it, or gave me the space to do it, or read the script and gave feedback, or all these things. Like, it just, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do it in isolation. It just wouldn't have happened. So for me, that certainly those relationships are like the most important thing. Especially something like film is a collaborative process. I think some people can be very singular and get something off the ground, with the force of their own will, but really it's such a collaborative thing. And you need those relationships. That's almost the most important building block of the entire filmmaking, you know, process. So I think you said in terms of advice to other people, I would just say that you need that basically. You need some people around you, even if it's just like one or two, or somebody who would read your script, or somebody who would tell you you're not insane for wanting to do something. You need that. So those, like, that's more important than having any piece of kit or whatever. You need those relationships. So yeah, they were super important for me, and I think for anybody would need that kind of, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think something that comes across as well, across all of your films, is a particular kind of visual style and also atmosphere that I think you produce really well, both in Strangers and in your earlier film, What Is Ian? I was wondering kind of what draws you to the particular kind of quite dark at times, but also sort of tense style of filmmaking that I've seen across your films. And also, is there anything specific that you could point to in how you make the films that you think contributes to that feeling for a viewer?
Yeah, I think I'm always interested in like slow cinema, or and I don't mean boring, although it could be, but like just film. Sometimes there's a certain interpretation of time that happens in film, or can happen, um, and it can be a quite a meditative experience or a hallucinogenic experience when you watch a certain film that just plays out in a certain time, and especially if you're in a cinema and you're kind of captive and you're and so like that's always been like really what I'm interested in terms of like when I watch stuff, or um and certainly when I make stuff as well, just having that kind of sometimes meditative, but sometimes that playing out of time in a kind of way that that immerses you. um and I guess a lot of the time, like in strangers, for example, that's often used to feel quite threatening because it's, this, the time and the silence between these two people, the audience are filling that with their worries about what might happen. Um, but really, it's just an empty shot, or, just a shot of two people. Um, so, yeah, that's often what I'm thinking of. How can I get that space and that time into the film? And sometimes it's just that you need to build things up and then have that one long shot that you've kind of earned by building things up to it, or um, stuff like that. And also that gives, because I come from a sound world, it gives a nice bit of space to have sound play a sort of subconscious role as well, because the edit is not too cutty and it's just sort of, yeah, got that space in it. So yeah, in a roundabout way, that's kind of what I'm interested in my films, just creating this kind of like, yeah, meditative or hypnotic kind of space in the film.
Yeah, great. I think that really comes across, and the films really do feel like they're kind of interrogating you a bit and getting you to think very deeply about them. And it's great as well that you've mentioned kind of drawing things from your work in sound. I think maybe just to talk a bit more generally about what you've done in film and any advice you'd have. Firstly, just quite a general question. What advice would you give to a young filmmaker starting out in the industry right now?
Yeah, it's hard. It's I wouldn't necessarily, whether I'm in the position to give the advice or not, I don't know, because I've done a few films, but I really feel like I was just feeling my way through it. So I certainly can't come from a place of I know all this stuff. Um, and also the way things are changing and stuff. What advice can anyone give to somebody starting out? It's hard to say. Um, I, as I said before, I think the relationships you have with people clearly is one of the most important assets you're going to have. I think if you're starting out making films, and you have the opportunity to do that, um, I really benefited from keeping it simple. I think I really benefited from thinking, okay, I'm going to make a film. I don't have any money. How can I do this in one shot? How can I do this in two shots? Or how can I do this with two people? I was always thinking of how can I do it in a contained way that is doable. So I think keeping it simple in early films, I feel like that's a pretty good idea. Um, and I think maybe just learning the process. I feel like creativity and stuff like that is a process that you kind of have to have in your life. You can't necessarily just come up with a film straight away. You kind of need that whole process around you of just the way you think about things, maybe the way you write things down, the way you allow yourself to be creative in those ways. I think is something that you don't necessarily get taught in school or university or whatever. But really, that's what you need, the building blocks of doing anything artistic. So um, I hope that's somewhat relevant to people.
No, I think it definitely will be. And I think also a lot of young filmmakers will feel like they don't quite know if they can call themselves filmmakers yet, or if they're kind of ready to jump into that world. So it's good to hear kind of that you still have sort of feelings like that, but you've made all these really good films, and they've had this level of success. And particularly, I guess, because we're thinking about festivals right now, this film had a lot of success with festivals. And you mentioned having kind of processes for doing things and getting yourself to a certain place creatively. Did you have much of a process in how you approached submitting it to festivals, or was it just certain festivals that caught your eye or that you felt a connection to, you submitted it to, and then kind of saw what happened after that?
Yeah, it's that. I mean, I probably should have had more of a process and probably should have had more of a strategy. Um, to be honest, all of my mental resources were just like in making the film. And then once it was done, it was kind of, well, okay, let's try this festival. There was a couple that I had, I'd love to, for example, I'd love to get into the BFI London Film Festival. Of course, who wouldn't? Um, why don't I submit it there? I never had any inclination that I could get into it. It was just I thought might as well, you know. It did get into there. And yeah, a lot of the other festivals were just ones that I liked, or ones that I'd been rejected from before, or ones I don't know. I had a few in my head. I had a little spreadsheet and stuff, but it wasn't too strategic. Perhaps it should have been more strategic. It was really just, can I get anybody to see this? Can I get people to sit down in a cinema and see this? If I can get 10, 20 people to see this, that will feel like a victory. So really, that was all I had in mind. And I was very lucky that it did get into some good ones. But I do think that a lot of this sometimes is the circumstances, what they're looking for in this particular moment, what they've already got. It's one of those where you might have an amazing film and you still might not get into the exact one you want. So I just think it's time and place. You certainly you can't let it beat you up if your film doesn't get in, because I've had that experience a lot of times. You have to make the film for the film's sake, I feel, first. That might be slightly naive, but that's how you make a decent film, and then after that, hopefully, it'll get in somewhere.
But yeah, I think what you're saying makes a huge amount of sense, and that sometimes actually you can overthink these things and kind of over
Mm.
strategize. So focusing on the film itself and making that exactly what you want it to be, and making it get across what you're interested in is definitely really important. Do you think there was anything specific about the film that struck a chord with festival audiences, or do you think it was just the fact that it was clear from the film that it was the type of film that you wanted to make and that it was very personal to your vision?
Yeah, I mean, I had some good conversations with people at festivals. Sometimes other directors, or people who'd seen it and stuff, and yeah, that was good, because obviously, because it's a film with an unclear outcome, or there's certainly a mystery sort of element to it. It was really important for me to hear how other people perceived it. That was a reward for me to get at festivals. Um, so there was all kinds of responses, which was interesting. Um, I think, because of the sort of lone female being approached by a man dynamic of the film is a massive part of it, and the conversations that I had with women who'd been in that kind of situation. Which of course I had these conversations before I wrote it and all these things, but afterwards, um, that was that was really interesting, hearing how certain things resonated with people. Um, but just generally, yeah, I think a lot of people have been in, to some description, been in situations that feel slightly like that. Like, maybe they're not as blown up as my one, but certainly a lot of people have been in situations that feel like that. Um, and I definitely got that response of people saying, "Oh yeah, that kind of reminded me of something." So um, yeah, those were the kind of responses that I got that were really really beneficial to me.
Yeah, great. I kind of wonder as well because I found the film online after the London Film Festival, and it was released online while still kind of playing the festival circuit. Did you get any different types of responses online, or did that feel different releasing it there to when you were showing it at festivals and talking to people afterwards? Or did it feel kind of fundamentally the same because you were just showing the film and getting people's responses?
Yeah, I think it's so different. I think the experience of, even if it's not a direct response from someone, but the experience of sitting in a theater and just being in a space with people watching your film is, number one, absolutely torturous. But number two, you can just you can feel something from people. You can feel if something's landed or if it hasn't. Um, and so it's completely different. I think when you release it online, in some ways you get more response because you get more people like reach out to you potentially by like email or whatever, or they might sort of comment on it or something. Um, and so you get quite a lot of response, but you you fundamentally you don't feel it in the same way as when you're physically in a space with somebody. So it's totally different. In a way, you're casting like a much wider net, but it's less specific what you get in return. Having said that, though, I certainly had a load of great chats with people and you know, meetings with people, and met a lot of people as a result of the online thing specifically. So it certainly enabled it to reach more people. But yeah, just for me personally, the sort of the physical experience was really the one that I made it for, you know. So um, so very different, basically.
Yeah, I think that that makes a lot of sense, and I think particularly with a film like this that's so impactful and where the audience brings so much to it, I can really see how having it play in a room full of people really changes the whole atmosphere of the piece.
Mm.
To kind of segue into just something a bit more general, we've talked a little bit about how your work in sound influenced how you approach this film. I'm also wondering, do you feel that kind of jumping between directing shorts and then working on sound has taught you broader things about filmmaking in general, even things like time management and keeping different projects running at the same time? Is there any kind of advice you could give in that area?
Um, it's difficult because I sometimes struggle with the idea, you know, I'm because I'm sort of in sound first, and then the directing was something that was on the side, that it grew to be a bigger space in my life. Um, and I sort of struggle with the idea of, you know, should I be doing two things? If I just focus all my energy on one thing, surely I will get further, which is possibly true. But there's definitely something you learn about when you're sitting in different chairs or different sides of the room. You learn a lot more about what the other person might be feeling, or um, certainly I learned loads in from working with directors in a sound perspective, not necessarily anything technical, but what they might be feeling or what they might be particularly anxious about in this in one moment or the other. Um, and then yeah, flipping that around. Certainly, when I was directing, I at least knew with the sound part, I already came to it knowing what that could bring. Um, so I think for me, it was beneficial to try different to be in different areas. Ultimately, I feel, you know, I'm interested in filmmaking. I'm interested in film, whether I'm doing sound or was if I was writing a script. It's you're trying to get closer to the experience of film. So um, for me, I enjoy going in different areas of it. But to be honest, you could spend a lifetime learning the skills in just one tiny corner of filmmaking. So it is difficult to spread yourself. You can spread yourself too thin as well. So yeah, it's difficult to know what the right answer is to that. But I suppose you just got to do what you feel at any given moment, really.
Yeah, I wonder, does that apply as well to different types of filmmaking? Because I know across your sound work, you've worked in TV and features, and then in filmmaking, you've worked in shorts and also some audio focused projects. Do you feel similarly that they all require kind of learning everything again from scratch, or is there a lot that you can carry over between them?
I think the main differences between working in different formats is how much time you get and how much sometimes how much money is available for you to work, and that basically translates to time as well. Um, you know, um, yeah, me and a friend of mine made quite long audio dramas together, which was really fun because they were completely cheap to make, and you could take characters in any location in the world you wanted because you didn't have to film it. Um, so there's like certain mediums that you can do loads in, um, and but yeah, working in sound in different let's say TV or film, it just comes down to I think how much time you get on a project. You can do really amazing work with loads of time, and with little time you have to be economical and focused and prioritize things in a different way. So I think all the skills are super transferable. It just comes down to how much time you've got to really get into things.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. It comes back to something you were saying earlier about kind of keeping things simple and being dictated a little bit by the constraints of having to do something in a particular way.
Mm.
So I can see how that's kind of developed from all these different aspects of work. To kind of start moving towards a conclusion, obviously we've just discussed all the different types of work you've done. Is there anything that you're working on at the minute that you're particularly excited about? Or that you want to talk about, or are things more kind of open at the minute?
Um, yeah, well, I mean, I basically was doing loads and loads of sound work since the film came out, and really enjoying working on loads of different cool films and just getting my head down there. Um, I have another script, bit of a longer script that I'm well trying to get myself together to shoot. I'm trying to get a little bit of I'm trying to get the team together and trying to get the funding together. Yeah, as I say, I get so much from my other work that yeah, I think you just do it when the time's right. But yeah, I do have another film that I'm hopefully going to move on to next year.
Great. Well, I mean, I'm excited to see it, and I'm sure many people who also really enjoyed Strangers, and who might learn about it as well from this interview, will be really excited as well. So that's kind of everything that we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us, Rob. And for everyone at home, you can watch Strangers through the link in the description for this video and through the BFI Film Academy Instagram account. If you're interested in watching even more great short films, remember that the BFI Future Film Festival is just around the corner, and we've recently released the short film program, which you can read about on the BFI website and through the BFI Film Academy social media accounts. Those films will be screening in venue at the BFI South Bank from the 20th to the 22nd of February, and also in venues across the UK and on the BFI YouTube channel from the 20th of February to the 6th of March. So hopefully we'll see you there at some of these BFI Future Film Festival events. If you join us at the same time next week, my fellow young programmer Beatrice Ben will be talking to Harry Sheriff about his film Jeremy a Nightmare. There's nothing else really to discuss, so thank you so much for joining us. Until next time.
Thank you. Bye.